1877, because there was always that 4-year discrepancy between 1844 and 1848. On his death certificate, they put born in 1848, which couldn't have been. But anyway, he didn't bother to correct that, and that was not that important to him. It would not be sufficient to let an opportunity to talk about Mayor McCarthy without telling you something about why his character may have been formed the way it was. A priest on Deer Island had told him when he was only someone about 6 or 7 years old, he wanted to know a little bit more about his mother and father. He said, I didn't get a chance to really know my mother, except when she was chasing me to get me to put my feet in a pan. And he said, and I remember her sitting on the deck of the Iowa when they came over to here, a long journey. And he says, I also have a recollection of the morning we left Giva to go to Dublin and then over to Liverpool to get a ship and to go on a ship coming across to Boston. And he said, when I woke up in the morning, I saw the sitting room was so bright, I looked up and found a hole, saw a hole in the roof, and the sun was shining through. And minutes later, my father, who had been scurrying around to bring provisions on the trip, so that many of them were required to bring their own food, he packaged bacon in the house. And he said, my father was looking, and he said, we've had a robbery in the house, and they had stole some of the food. And the father did not have much money when he was leaving. It was just another one of the trials that went in trying to get over here. But that's what happened. Somebody got into the house, and that's why the hole was in the roof. So he has so much information in this particular episode of his life. But he wanted to know more about his mother and father because it troubled him that he didn't know where they were buried as he got older. And the priest said to him that their dying wish was that they would that she wanted her children to persevere in their faith. That was the thing. It wasn't for riches, wealth, or fame, or fortune. It was to persevere in the faith. And that remained fixed in his life, all his life. All his life it remained fixed in his head. And that's why he was so particular about following the rules of fast and abstinence. His daughter Mary said, my father had a calendar that was checking days of fast and abstinence. All his life it was that way, so that he wouldn't deviate. So you can just imagine what state of mind his parents must have been in when they knew they weren't going to live. They were relatively young. He was 4, the oldest brother was 13 or 14 years old. To have 7 children and you know you can't stand up, you can do nothing for them, let alone leave them anything. They had nothing to leave. But they did leave that dying wish that they would persevere, and that was honored all their lives with all of the children. So that was to their credit. So that was where his character was formed. He wanted to fulfill his commitments, and it was because of his mother and father. And he also mentioned that anything that he was able to accomplish in life, he said, would be attributable to them. And because he couldn't find out where they were buried, he built a monument in St. Francis Cemetery. And it's a very beautiful monument, McCarthy stone, and he did it in memory of his mother and father. So you can see where his orientation was. He knew his roots, and he wanted to honor the people who were there ahead of him, because he said, anything that I have, he attributed to his mother and father. And he hardly knew them. He was 4 years old when he found out they were gone. Now, does anyone have any questions they may want to bring up on McCarthy? Yeah, Don?
I have actually 2. One is, did you ever find out whether McCarthy found out what the young man who accosted him in the street had been accused of and what he was found guilty of, and what did McCarthy ever give him an explanation that you were able to track down?
It isn't in his memoirs, but he was known for responding. When he said he would respond, it was known. There's an assumption made that he did. I don't know. I think that probably that young man was somewhat rambunctious in trying to find out about what happened. He said after he kept telling him, he was telling him the truth. So McCarthy said, well, it's easy to find, but he says sometimes difficult to face.
Sure.
So I don't know. He did not. Like 12 by 15 a box, and he come in and he said to me, do you know somebody told me you might be interested in the McCarthy books, and I was looking through it, and I saw a book like this, and I saw other things, and I said to him, gee, I said, how much is this? And he said he wanted to sell it for $200 or $300. So I said, I had nothing to do with that in the Department of Education. And so at any rate, I said, well, I didn't have as much money then. I don't have much money now, but I had less then. I didn't want to venture forth with my own money to buy the book, so I would have liked to. So he left. And when I get over into the archives and they said they had nothing on McCarthy, I thought about this guy with that box, and they said, I said, what in the world was that guy's name? I couldn't remember it. And I think he came from Somerset, Swansea, Seekonk, somewhere between here and Fall River. I said, that's not going to help me out either. Because I didn't know where to find that guy. And I said, I wanted to get that out of my mind because it was exactly what we would need in the Providence City Archives. So I was there in the City Archives about a year, and I couldn't believe my eyes. That guy walked in, and I never saw him since. He come in, and I said to him, were you the guy that has a box of McCarthy material? And he said, yes. He said, where'd you see me? I said, you went into the Department of Education. I wanted to get a hold of him because I wanted to know what his name was. And I said, do you still have that material? And he said, I sold it. Oh, so, but he said, the guy that bought it hasn't paid me. Oh, and I said, well, when can you let me know? I said, we need this here. I didn't care whether it was 500 or 1,000 because the scrapbook was in here. And this has got the productions of Shakespeare when McCarthy played the part of Polonius in here. And this was in that box. And I said to him, can you call me? Well, I got his number though. This time I had his name and number and all. And then when I didn't hear from him right away, I did call him. I wanted to follow up on that. And he said to me, the guy thinks he might pay for it, but I'm going over and I want to find out one way or the other. And so, he called me back the following day and told me I took it back because he said he wanted to wait a little longer to pay me. I said, no. So he took the box, and it ended up in the I couldn't believe it. I never would have found his name. I didn't know he had been met. He didn't have it with him, no. But I recognized his face. Boy, what a find that was. And I got the city to buy it, so it belongs to the city. I think it was the finance director down there says, that isn't worth it. He said, what is it? He didn't even see it. He didn't know what it was worth. When I told him it was, I think he wanted about 400. But I said, if I get down there, I said, I wish I could say 3. Maybe it'd be a little bit easier. But I went down there and I saw Alex. And Alex Prignano wasn't interested in that at all. He said, that's more junk. He said, that's too much money. How would he know? He didn't look at it. He didn't know what it was. So I went around him and I went to Matt Clarkin. And I said, Matt, he was a friend of Alex Prignano. So I said, can you get that guy? This is on McCarthy there. He said, and he got interested in it. I knew I had that thing sold. So I didn't get a call from Prignano. I got one from Clarkin, and he said to me, it's going through. I said, thank you. So that's why I got it there.
John,
Yeah.
I have a question. The other brothers, you have Patrick McCarthy and then John Carty, but there were other sons. Did anything become of them? And
Oh,
did they
all right.
keep the name Carty or did they take McCarthy?
All right. Did they what? Did they?
Did they keep the name, did they have Carty?
It seems to me that those who did live all remained under the name of Carty. See, however, I should have added one thing when I told you about when the two that were in Boston, Patrick and his brother, when they were in Boston, they were with their Uncle Henry and their Aunt Mary. Now, the other two, Henry Carty said, when they were in the orphanage, and some people that knew him well said, how are you going to split them up? He said, I can't take 4. He was worried if he could take on 2 because he had to have food for them. And he was just about making it himself. And so the other 2 went to Maine. 2 went to Maine and 2 stayed in Boston. And they were in Aroostook County, Maine or something. But the 4 of them did get together later as adults. They got together numerous times. But they would have been under the name of Carty. Now, McCarthy said when he was a teenager, 13 and 14, and he later, but when you got to the period of 1874, and he was interested in going to Harvard, he said, the name has got to be settled. And he said, I'm not going to settle for what the English did to my ancestors and change the name. He said, because I'm going to do something today that's going to bring it back. And when he went up there to fill out the application, he put Patrick McCarthy. And he said, I was happy I did it. He said, that's the way it should have been. So he put that name down. So that's the point in time that Patrick himself always went under the name of McCarthy from that day on. So who did he beat? He beat the people way back that said we're going to change your name. He said, I'll go the other way.
Payback was you know what?
That's right. If you want to see his handwriting in here, it's interesting. And if you want to see, there's a couple of other things in here. Interest. You know, last year there was a lecture here on John Gordon, and this book was in the McCarthy collection, and it's on the trial of John and William Gordon. The whole transcript is in here. And now, this would have been, a trial would have been before McCarthy's arrival here, probably just about the time he was born. I think the trial was in 1844, 45, right around then. And anyway, he had this in his memoirs, and he must have been on this thing for weeks. And he studied, and it's all underlined. He's got. And he writes passages in the copy because he was checking on the legality. Because they used, the only thing they had on John Gordon was circumstantial evidence. And he was getting into the legal technicalities of that. He knew this trial inside and out. And he wrote on page after page his own notes. So he did a study on it. What was the other thing? Did I answer Paul O'Malley? Yeah. Did I answer you, Paul? So you'll have to never make apologies for the presence or the existence of Patrick McCarthy, because he made his mark and he did it well, and he lived his faith until the day he died. And to think that he was a 4-year-old orphan on Deer Island, and he reached the pinnacle of power in Providence in 1907 when he became mayor.
Can I say one thing about John, by the way? I worked down with John for almost 2 years.
Yeah, that's right.
But you should go up and visit him, because he has the wealth of knowledge and information down there in archives and cities. You can go down there checking on streets that are abandoned right now, to history, to anything you can think of. And this man is so knowledgeable. I can tell you this much, he is an astounding man.
He is.
Very nice to see you.
About 70-something minutes into it at this point. There's Joe. Joe, you're very photogenic. I got several shots of you. My eyes open? It's still on. It's still on, Joe. It's muted. You say anything inappropriate, Joe? Trimmed your hair now.
What's it gonna say? You and your brother are both. But Dad says, listen, I'm trying to get a hold of Sean Riley. Do you know